Hey kids, this is Ivan. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about NPC Spellcasters and what I think is kind of a liberating way of looking at them, so you don't have to go quite so crazy and you can have a little bit more fun. Now, you have to ignore a few rules in order to do this, but I don't think that should be a real big problem. Now, how I view spellcasters in my particular game is there's two different groups. There's people that go out and become better and better at spellcasting by adventuring. That's the player characters for the most part. So, even though it makes no sense why a magic user should get better at casting spells by going out into dungeons, into wilderness areas, and it makes no sense that a cleric should be better at becoming more devoted to his god and casting better spells by doing the same thing, this is a game mechanic, so I accept it. Now, in terms of NPCs, a lot of them can do that the same way. However, there's a second group of spellcasters. For magic users, these are the guys that stay in their towers, stay in their laboratories, and are almost like, research scientists, and they sit there for years poring over manuals and books and mixing stuff up in cauldrons, and they become better at spellcasting that way, so they don't necessarily have all the stats that an adventurer might have. They might not have the same amount of hit points, but they might have a lot of spells. Ditto for clerics. You might have a cleric that stays his entire life in his temple, and is devoted to his god, and is able to cast some spells that are technically beyond the level he is, just based on how he's ran his life. Now, these avenues aren't open to player characters because the game would be really boring. I really don't want to play like Alchemists and Alembics. I'd like to play Dungeons and Dragons, if you don't mind. However, this is, to me, a different way of looking at, why some of these NPCs have these abilities. In that same line of thought, you can have NPCs that have access to spells that they really shouldn't have access to based on their level, so to speak. They may not even really have a level. I do some stuff in my game where there's a cleric. There's this Father Timon of the Temple of Rannoch in the town of Midton, and he might be able to do things like cast Restoration or Resurrection or whatever. And these are spells that would require him to be like 16th level. So he's really not 16th level. He might only have 10 hit points. But he's this old man, and he spent his entire life in devotion to this god. So he can cast some of those neat, help you out spells if you get in a real jam. But he's not going to be able to cast a lot of the other things. He's not going to be casting Flame Strike or Blade Barrier and all that kind of stuff. And in terms of what his level is, it's kind of ambiguous. Ditto for some of the magic user types. I have one guy in my game who's kind of a charm guy. It's not quite the same as specialist wizards you'd find in 3rd edition or even 2nd edition with the kits. But he can cast things like Geas and Mass Charm, even though he's not of the crazy level you need, which I think is about 12, in order to cast stuff like that. Oh yeah, Mass Charm is 16. And there's another wizard that they ran into. Actually, they went to his tomb because he had died. But he was able to cast, these kind of spells where you're summoning demons and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of those are in Unearthed Arcana. But a bunch of those really require you to be about 16th or 18th level. And this guy, even in the notes that they found, kind of admitted that he was not all that powerful, but he had devoted his entire life to doing that. And so that, I think, is a neat way to have a little bit of flavor in your game. You can, and as for in terms of XP, if you happen to kill one of these guys, you can figure it out. It's not a big deal. I don't worry that much. But that's just a different way of looking at NPC spellcasters, where you don't get so bogged down in the rules and you focus more on, well, what do I want this guy to be like?